Hello, this is Julie Lanford, the Wellness Director at Cancer Services, and I am here today with Jeff Ungetheim. He is a licensed clinical mental health counselor and director of the Children's Cancer Support Program at Brenner's Children's Hospital, and he also has a private practice of his own. He has been with pediatric oncology at Brenner's for almost 20 years and practicing mental health counselor for 30 years. So he has a lot of wisdom to share with us today. So thank you, Jeff, for being here and for sharing your information with us.
For having me. Thanks. Looking forward to it.
So today our topic is really talking about building resilience and handling stress during the current COVID pandemic. And a couple weeks ago, I think it was, I interviewed Dr. Stacy Wentworth, who's the director of survivorship at Wake Forest, and she talked about how cancer survivors can use some of the tools that they've learned coping with cancer and apply that to coping with our current situation. And she actually said that survivors probably could share some of the tools that they've learned. So just up front, I thought maybe you could share some tips and tricks on how to handle stress and anxiety during this time.
Yes, yeah, I'd love to. Some of the methods are more techniquey, and some of them are just everyday things that we may be doing already or may have forgotten to do. But I'll just talk about a few. First one that comes to mind is mindfulness. It's a popular topic. You can find lots of information about it on the internet. The clinical type of mindfulness practice developed by a researcher named Jon Kabat-Zinn to work with patients who had chronic pain back in the 70s, and has since become a international teaching tool to help people with a variety of stresses, depression, anxiety, pain, cancer, a variety of things to deal with pain. It's a very popular term, a lot out there, but Jon Kabat-Zinn was one that really popularized it in the West. It has to do with focusing on the here and now and training the mind and the body to be present to your present awareness, really. There are apps on the internet. If you look up apps, particularly through his website and in general, for kids, they use something called belly breathing. But if you look up mindfulness apps, you can get them on the phone. Essential practice is sitting in a chair like I am, or lying on bed in a place where you're not going to be interrupted for 5, 15, 20 minutes, and bringing your attention to your breath as it goes in and out of your mouth or your nose. And that's your attention, the sensory attention to the sensory feel of your breathing, and let your mind focus on that. And as you lie, you breathe normally. And as your mind wanders off, which it will, you simply go out and find your attention, what it went to, like what am I going to fix for dinner, or what could I be doing besides lying here thinking about my breath, blah, blah, blah. Your mind goes off and you reach out and you just grab it. Don't judge yourself about it. Don't criticize, just realize and grab that attention and pull it back to focusing on your breathing. And you're just aware of your breathing. I mean, just with people with high anxiety, I start them out with trying to do that for 5 minutes. And that is the practice. That's the beginning stages of the practice and the ending stages, because you can do that for 5 minutes, great, do it for 10. If you can do it for 10, do it for 20. But if you can do it for 5, that's terrific. If you can do it for 1, it matters, because thing it's doing is it's kicking in your parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the part of your nervous system that calms you down away from the other part, which is the sympathetic, which hypes you up, which gets you ready to fight, to run, to deal with something intense. But doing that practice is mindfulness.
So anywhere from 1 minute to 20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah. 20 minutes is ideal, but if you can do it 1 minute, that's better than nothing. And practice letting your mind pull attention to your breathing.
And do you recommend that someone does that at a certain, like, kind of scheduled into their day, or would you say you do that when you notice your mind's kind of racing, or you seem like you can't, I don't know, you can't calm down or something?
That's a great question, because I would ideally I'd like for people to practice that when they're not in a particularly anxious state.
Okay.
Not necessarily when you're about to fall asleep in bed, but first thing in the morning, middle of the day, if you have time throughout the day, you could do it 2 or 3 times. But practice it regularly every day, times where you're not particularly anxious or not in the heights of anxiety, and getting the practice of that. Now, as you practice that, you train your body to react to your breathing, which you can start to use it when you are feeling particularly anxious as well. But if you start there, you'll have less of a reaction than if you practice it. It's like doing free throws or other kinds of body mechanics where you're training your body to do something without you thinking about it.
Right. You want to practice your free throws, not only in the middle of a game.
Right. 100%.
So when I'm thinking about mindfulness, how does that fit in with somebody's, like, their spirituality? Like, is it something that can go along with prayer or spiritual practices, or do you see it as something that's sort of separate?
So mindfulness is a meditation technique. It's been around for thousands of years. Buddhists use it. Christian monks do it. Everyday people use it. It's becoming more and more a common practice to sit and meditate. And the breathing is something that helps relax the mind, relax the body, to help one sit and just be focused on their prayer, whatever their particular method of prayer is. So it's actually been around for thousands of years. So, for example, a Christian practice might be to pick a psalm, like Psalm 22 has to do with fear, and Psalm 25 have to do with fear. And you can read through the psalm, you can use your breathing and pick out a word or phrase in the midst of that psalm that speaks to you, and let your mind focus on that psalm, or that particular word or phrase. So it's, again, to reiterate, it's been used by religious people, all kinds of different faiths for thousands of years. Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, etc. So
if they wanted to choose to integrate them together.
At the same time, they don't have to. When John Kabat-Zinn, created his training program, it was, a religious. I mean, it didn't have to do that for people who have a religious connection. You can do it without any kind of connection to a religious belief necessarily.
So what are some other methods that you recommend for dealing with stress and anxiety?
Another one is I teach folks who have traumatic reactions, and they don't have to have a large big T trauma, but example, somebody cuts me off in traffic, and my body tightens up in certain places, and I realize that, and yet I don't need my body to tighten up. It's just because I'm irritated or angry or nervous or something. So when you realize your body is tightening up in certain places, you may be watching a news report, or you may have gotten some bad financial news, is paying attention where your body's tightening up, because our bodies hold motion. And the more we hold it in our bodies, often we don't deal with it out here, in our hearts and our minds and in our social network. So it's paying attention to where we tight and try to loosen that up. That's a common trauma skill, and you can do that driving in your car, talking to your friend, in the middle of work day. If I'm feeling tight in the back of my neck, talking to somebody in the middle of a clinic, I can talk to them and pay attention to the back of my neck and go, what's going on? And pay attention to the emotion behind that. Sometimes you might not know what the emotion is. It might take a bit to discover that. But that's in the here and now way of that. And it sounds really simple, but you don't want your body to store up a lot of emotions over a time. And some people have done that in their entire lives, and takes a lot more work to undo that kind of thing. But
Yeah, I feel like some people are really good at identifying emotions. And then some people, it's like there's three that they could pull from. So sometimes it might just be recognizing, I guess, when your body feels tense and then attempting to identify
yeah.
what it is.
One, you can identify the emotion if you can. If you don't get stressed about it, is attempt to relax the muscle group. And, and outside of COVID, massage might help some people. Inside of COVID, yoga or having a partner, that you live with, massage, the area that maybe help to relax the muscles, taking a warm bath, heating pad, other types of things that might relax that muscle. Sometimes just envisioning the muscle and just trying to relax the area around it and seeing if it will do that.
So you mentioned yoga. There are several free yoga classes actually in our area. Wake offers one, Novant sponsors one. We have one at Cancer Services that are by Zoom. So there are ways that, and I think what some people might not realize is yoga really, it kind of teaches you some things that goes well, I think, with mindfulness, and you can do pieces of yoga throughout your day. It doesn't all have to be like an hour class or something. But for me, the final relaxation part of yoga is my favorite part, which is basically like laying there and doing nothing. But kind of reminds me of the mindfulness piece where the yoga instructor is sort of guiding you through breathing. And, when the first time I ever did yoga, I don't think I'd spent that much time just like breathing and relaxing. And I didn't realize how much that really helped me and that it was something I could do anytime, really.
Right. Yoga is studied with people with substance abuse, with trauma, with depression. It's used, I know, at the Cancer Center for cancer patients. So it doesn't have to be the intense type of. It could be gentle yoga, modified yoga, and doesn't have, like you said, doesn't have to be long. It could be a few moments, and it incorporates the body exertion with the breathing. Within your mind has to attend to what you're doing. Otherwise, for me, if I fall over, and so it's that present awareness of your whole body and mind going on at the same time that it pulls together. So it's really an important skill. But you don't have to, be an advanced practitioner to use it. So
yeah. So I think I was gonna say, like for some people, I'm not sure if now is they're so kind of stressed and worried that it seems hard to try something new. Like, do you find that that people turn to the things they're already comfortable with to cope or try new things? Like what's that balance?
I think if there's not things you already have that you naturally enjoy, and that's definitely the first place to start. And that's going to vary a range of individuals, but something that incorporate, pulls your mind away from worry and stress, that is physical enough, that engages your senses. My family and I love walks in the woods, so we do that much more than we did in our other previous COVID busy days. So go by and sit by a lake or a pond or a still place that you enjoy. If walking you're not able to do that, or if you don't have the energy to do that, just sit by a place that you love to look at and just take it in, enjoy it. Listening to music, just sitting and taking time. Sometimes people may have that on the background, but sitting and focusing on the music and let your mind and your body feel it. And that can be, that way you can do music you tend to like, and you can also try out different music. Oh, maybe I'll try out this other kind. We're listening to jazz last night, which I love, but it's very unique and relaxing for me, at least.
I was just thinking about how jazz is something that like I hadn't really liked before. Um, when I was younger, I guess I never really understood it. It just seemed to go on forever. And but it was also one of those things where I was like, people seem to like it. People seem to be kind of relaxed. Like maybe I should learn to like it. And so on my Pandora, I have dinner jazz and cool jazz, and sometimes I just play it like as background, and I've started liking it. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting to think about, trying out new music just
Mhm.
as a curious
Mhm.
kind of thing to do.
Yeah. Um, I mean, other things that I know less about are hobbies like, knitting and crocheting and things that involve your mind and your emotions. Sometimes you may be doing that for somebody else. So, which is an important part of dealing with stress. Watching funny movies, memorizing, learning, listening to jokes, memorizing jokes, and telling them to other people. There's all kinds of
That's
humor on the internet. So,
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about not just reading jokes, but like memorizing them and telling them to people.
yeah.
As and you could do that with your friends virtually.
Hmm.
We could that's giving me an idea that we could host like a joke telling
Hmm.
group
Yeah.
where people find a joke and practice it, and then we all share our jokes.
Some people say, "Oh, I don't remember jokes." Well, hear one, write it down, and then practice it, and then tell several people. And after you've told a number of people, it starts to become your own, and then
Yeah.
it becomes your joke, and then you know it may come into something you enjoy doing, or it may not, but it's trying. It's
Yeah.
try. Um, Watching old movies that you've never seen, haven't seen in a long time. We were watching The Shaggy Dog last night which was done in the 60s, I think, 70s.
What what did you watch that on?
Disney Plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go back to old-timey movies.
Um, yeah.
I was thinking about the walking and kind of the relaxing music that for me I've discovered the park in my neighborhood that I previously had gone through. I knew it was there, but like having now gone there more frequently, it's become this sort of happy place, and I've noticed so many more places in the park that I never even saw before. And now it's like I want to go there. Like I just want to get inside all the trees, and find the times when hardly anyone else is there. So that's been interesting for me to sort of discover in this time. And then someone else I had, Ben Curdy, who's a recreation therapist at Baptist, he
I
came
know.
and spoke to a group. It's been several years, but he told me, hey, that you can go on Pandora and get the relaxation station. So I have this Pandora station that's just called relaxation, and it is very relaxing, and I like to sort of doodle. I'm more of a drawing kind of person, and so I'll when I need to take a break, I'll doodle and then play that station. and
That's
and
great.
it just became a thing that I was like, oh yeah, that's something I could do.
Yeah. Good.
So you shared with me before we started our recording that adjusting our thinking is one way that can help us cope. So why is that, or how does that work?
Um, well, one of the clinical areas that comes out of is cognitive therapy, but this is the general idea that how we think, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about reality, what we believe about our capabilities impacts often how we feel. Um, and so if I'm thinking about all the stuff I heard on the news that was negative, and I hold that in my mind. And every time I stop to what I'm doing, to think, my mind tends to go there. Then, as I'm dwelling on that, whether I'm choosing to or not choosing to, that impacts how I feel. So, beginning to recognize where sometimes people are really positive thinkers, and other people, at times people are extremely negative, and a lot of us feel right somewhere in the middle. But recognizing how we think about that impacts our feeling, how we feel. I don't think it's the only thing, but it's definitely a part of that. One way I think I help people think about that is goals versus desires. Goals are things that we can control or mostly control, and desires are things we long for, hope for. We may be able to have some persuasive part in that, but we don't control. And often our stress level rises on the things that, are desires, but the things we don't really have control over. And spending more mental energy and physical energy on the things in our lives that we can control. I remember when my son was an infant and he was sick. He was in and out of Brenner Children's Hospital over 21 times when he was an infant, which was 27 years ago. But, every day my wife and I would, it's going to sound silly, but straighten up our den. Considering the big picture things, a lot of which we didn't have a lot of control, but doing the small medical things we could do for him and straightening up our den so we had a non-chaotic place to live was something that we could control. So being mentally shifting for that it gives us a sense. Another way to think that is, no matter how out of control our circumstances can be, we can still make at least the behavioral choice to be kind, to love, to offer ourselves to others to in some way, rather than the opposite. So we're never fully out of control, even though, sometimes we feel like, all these things are out of control, but, how I am with my family, how I am with my kids, how I'm up with we're not perfect, of course, but how I choose to be kind and generous or offer myself in good ways is something I can control.
I feel like right now that's a important list to have in mind when it feels like it's easy to identify all the things we can't do or we don't have control over, is to have that list of things that you can do, no matter what.
No matter what. Yeah. Lots of physical things in that, and they may feel at the beginning like, they don't matter, but they do. They matter. If I, do something over and over again, am I kind and over again? It may not change the COVID, but it changes my relationships. It changes how I feel inside. There's happiness researchers, and there's actually a scientific study on what people happy. Sonia Bemirsky is one of the researchers in happiness study. Lynn Johnson is a popular psychologist, talks about that. Ed Diener talk about things, and focusing on the things you can control, and one of those is being kind and loving in your relationships. Sometimes that's hard work, and often it can be really hard work and challenging, and
especially if you're stuck at home with them all the time and you don't
you
don't feel like it.
How do I get breaks from my family? How do I take care of myself when I deal with stress in a different way than my family does? Something to think about.
So one of the tips you mentioned was think about your problems for a limited time during the day, set the time and keep it. So I'm curious how that works practically.
Okay, well, so there's two sections of that. One is limit your intake time. I mean, I have one colleague I work with that doesn't listen to the news at all before COVID because it was too negative stuff. And she doesn't want to just intake that. She gets it through a gatekeeper, which is her, happens to be her spouse. He tells her, that sounds like, but for her emotionally, that helps. But limit your news intake, but don't be watching it all the time. I think Dr. Wentworth talked about that a couple of weeks. The corollary is recognizing, when your mind has drifted off to worrying about this or that, or thinking about this news reel or that news reel, or or getting into conversations with people about COVID and that. Early on, it felt like every conversation was about that. And some of that, especially early on, is needful, but as you go on, that needs to be reined in and try to limit those conversations. Hey, let's change the subject. The other piece was limiting the time. Is okay, if I think about my future, say I'm having financial difficulties, spend a certain amount of time when you can spend productive time thinking about what can I control here, what can I do, what are my plans for the future, to the degree I have knowledge and opportunity to do that. And so I'm going to do that at this time if there's other people involved with them, but to drift in and out of that all day long, and I get that our minds move constantly and that's really a hard thing to do, but it's an anxiety technique where, if you have a worry, you're going to try to put it in the box, and I'll take that out at 4 p.m. and I'm going to think about that particular problem. It's something I can have control over. Okay, I need to do this, I need this and this. Okay, when am I going to do those things? Okay.
Okay, so like, if you think of it, maybe you write down whatever, sort of put it in that box if you need to write it down, to save it for later, whenever that time is you're going to deal with that.
Rather than allowing your brain to just meander in and out of that worry constantly. Now, at the beginning, you may just do that, but again, it's a training process of, okay, you see your mind wander off, just like in mindfulness. Oh, I'm over here worrying. I'll pull it back. I'll put that worry in my metaphorical box that you create, or you might have a real one. For little kids, you may write down something. Okay, we're going to put that worry, and then adults can use that too, in a physical box. Well, I'll take it out. We'll either pray about them, we'll talk about them, we'll focus on them at a limited amount of time, and into practice of catching yourself worrying about, in your mind wander. No one sits down and chooses, I'm going to worry for the next 15 minutes as hard as I can. Really? No one does that. Somebody does to do that. They're intrusive thoughts. And so there's different practices and skills that trying to intervene in those intrusions and pull you back to focus on the here and now and something productive that you can do. And that may be recreation, that may be something else, and pull it away from the worry.
So I want to talk just kind of in closing about resilience, because I'm not a mental health professional, but I feel like everybody's been talking about resiliency in the last couple of years. So it's kind of come mainstream, like mindfulness maybe has become real popular. When it comes to resilience, what is that, first of all? Like, what does that mean, or what would resiliency be?
And I mean, this is just a down and dirty definition, but it's the ability to persevere under pressure. It's a learned ability. I mean, people learn it. Some people are better at it than others, inherently better, handle more stress, and tend to be more positive in negative circumstances. So there is a genetic component of that. But people that don't do so well can also learn to be that way. So it's be persevering under pressure. It's adapting to one's circumstances. It's finding things, again, and it goes along with what I can control. It's what in my environment can I change? What do I need to change? How do I need to change how I think, my relationships, my environment, what I'm doing, to adapt to this particular thing. It's the ability to see one's own capabilities, whether you don't believe it. When my son was an infant, he was sick. For 9 months, my wife and I slept 4 hours a night. We didn't have nursing care at night, and he was on oxygen. And so we slept 4 hours in that. And at the beginning, I need a lot of sleep. And at the beginning of that, I will not survive this. It's like, this is going to, but I learned that I can handle more than I thought I could. I can adapt to that. It was not fun. It was not easy. But I realized I became stronger than I thought I was. One, I had to do it. Well, I didn't.
Right. You don't have a choice.
I couldn't do it. But, I could have backed out, but not really. But that's one of the things, owning a choice. But so it's adapting. It's figuring out, how, digging down deep and what in myself can I pull out that. And so for some people, that's, connecting with God and the way they relate to God and that power. For others, it's relying on themselves and the most significant people in their lives and say, how are we going to get this together? I've been reading a book on resilience by a Navy SEAL, and it's like as functionally self-sufficient as they are a team. And that is a large part of how they get through things as a team. And so your team may be one other person, or if you're alone, your team may be somebody you rely on, either a professional or an aunt that lives in, North Dakota. But this is the team mentality. We're going to get through this together. It's a catchphrase nowadays, but it's usually important. So
So that's like
that come to mind.
That's what I guess Dr. Wentworth, when she talked about how people who've been through treatment and are on the other side, they leaned on something to get through what, was a difficult situation, and they got through it. And they can use those same tools now, and they can advise others on how they did it to help get through. So I guess that's resiliency. So I like your definition. Are there any kind of last thoughts that you have for us today about either resiliency or stress and anxieties, especially around this time?
A couple of things for people who already have struggled with anxiety, depression, or even trauma, is that, definitely find people that you can talk to, who will listen to you, and/or professional folks that help walk alongside you with that. Trauma, like something like this, can pull up people's agitation and anxiety from past trauma, and so that just compounds the fear and anxiety in that. So while this that needs to be looked at and addressed, and make sure you get, listen to reliable medical advice, reliable medical resources. Dr. Wentworth talked about that. I think it's important, getting information from everything. We get bombarded by that. That's just way over too much information. For the introverts particularly, but also for the extroverts, giving yourself permission to express feelings, talking about, whether it's writing it out, whether it's singing, whether it's drawing, whether it's creating in some other way. The bike behind me was, is there's nothing on it that was made from a real bike. It was created by somebody, you know. So if you've created something in the past, find something to, create or express your feelings with, to get them out of your psyche and out of your body. Allow other people to care for you. Some people are extremely resilient. Extremely independent, resourceful people. But going through when I tell newly diagnosed families in peds oncology, is no one gets through this without help. No one, this is just successfully without some help. You already have 25 professional people working with you, but you also probably need more than that to support people, people in your, in your environment that will help you through this. So it's okay to ask for help. It's also giving you permission to let yourself, be needy sometimes. Particularly for the very resourceful kind of person that just got it, feels like they have to do it all their own.
I think accepting help it's not always easy, but sometimes it's easier if you remind yourself that by accepting somebody's help, you're giving them a gift.
Sure. Yeah, very much so. And do something that brings you joy each day. Pick something that necessarily pleasure or happiness, but joy. It's something that's almost, just really fills your soul. It may be one simple thing, but do it each day and remember it. And that's very individual type of thing. But
yeah,
there.
Well, that is great. Very helpful advice. I know it's leaving people with a lot of things to think about, so I think that's really good. I appreciate you for sharing your wisdom with us today and for all the care you provide for families and people facing cancer. So thank you so much for being here today, and I hope that you continue to find all those joyful things in your life as you navigate all this time. But we will share some tips and tools in our notes, and be sure to connect people to the resources that may be helpful to them. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.